is the thing about the Roundway experiment. It pertains to the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst coordination of global events. Indeed, the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst basically took control of everything via three mechanisms: intelligence, drugs, and psychiatry. Indeed, regarding intelligence, the Nazi intelligence continuums were the most complex intelligence continuums that ever existed up until that point. And through penetration, they were able to mastermind the fall of Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and France simply through intelligence machinations. So it's interesting to consider, indeed, they also penetrated the entire intelligence services of Britain, America, and the Soviet Union, and therefore were able to coordinate the Cold War. Indeed, it's also interesting to note the second mechanism, which is drugs, and indeed the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst coordinated originally as the Abwehr, SD, SS, Gestapo, originally coordinated all the chemical and pharmaceutical companies, and any that were outside their domain, they placed their intelligence operatives within, and therefore were able to take control of the entire combine in that regard. And indeed, IG Farben is the world's most powerful corporation and basically coordinates the destinies of nations. So it's all very interesting to consider, and indeed the overarching addictions to drugs in Western society are due to the Nazi control over the drugs trade via networks interconnected with MI6 and the CIA. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the MI6 alone makes £500 billion a year on the drugs trade. And this is part of a Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst agenda to drug the Anglo populations and install the Fourth Reich on the ashes of Anglo-America. So it's interesting to consider, indeed, the third mechanism of control is psychiatry. Indeed, the psychiatric systems of both the West and the Russian Federation, which is a continuation of the Soviet Union, are coordinated by bloodline descendants of the original Nazi psychiatrists. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the psychiatric system continues to involve lobotomization, electroshock, and mass drugging. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, this Nazi psychiatric continuum dates back to the Mad Housekeepers Guild meeting of 1756 in Bremen, where a lot of this was planned. Indeed, German secret societies had been planning the destruction of the Anglo populations and the Russian populations at that time as part of an overarching Aryan thesis, whereby the strongest Aryans would survive and dominate the rest of society like cattle. So it's all very interesting indeed. A lot of what is going on in the West and Russia at this moment has to do with German psychiatric thought from the 1700s. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the psychiatric system in Russia is one of the most monolithic systems, and indeed over 1 million people are incarcerated in psychiatric hospitals in Russia. Indeed, a lot of this is to do with psychopolitics and a containment of dissidents. So many people in Russian psychiatric hospitals are there for political reasons as part of psychocorrection, which is itself a Nazi concept. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the Soviets learned from the German psychiatrists and began their mind control experimentation in the early 1920s, involving PSI experiments and various mind control and behavior modification techniques. Indeed, they had learned these techniques from Abwehr operatives. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the Abwehr were highly operative in the Soviet Union as early as the 1920s, so it's interesting considering indeed Joseph Stalin and Lavrenti Beria were long-range penetration Abwehr operatives and later Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst operatives, so it's very interesting to consider this. Indeed, there are rumors that an anti-Abwehr faction of the GRU killed Joseph Stalin in the early 50s, and then the Soviet government pretended that Stalin was alive for several months after he had been murdered by dissident renegade factions within the Russian military intelligence services. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. Lavrenti Beria was also murdered by GRU operatives acting renegade, apparently also. And indeed, the show trial of Lavrenti Beria was faked by the Soviet authorities, so it's all very interesting to consider indeed. This renegade GRU faction operated for itself, interestingly, so it's all very interesting to consider indeed. I have stated intelligence services are factional. However, the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst seems very unified compared to other intelligence services, so it's all very interesting to consider indeed. The Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst is chiefly operative these days out of Leipzig, so they seem to have one of their main headquarters in Leipzig. This is the headquarters of the Steppenwolf faction, which coordinates the drugs trade in the United Kingdom and the United States, so it's all very interesting to consider this overarching Nazi operation and the tentacles of Nazi intelligence still represented in the modern world through the deep penetration of Western intelligence and Soviet Russian intelligence structures. Indeed, as stated before, that the Royal Arch Freemasons are currently coordinating the Vatican. However, this is only true to a point whereby the Royal Arch Freemasons are themselves coordinated by IG Farben operatives of NW7. Indeed, the Turkish military intelligence operatives running the entity are themselves chiefly operative for IG Farben. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, as I stated, the British Royals are coordinated by IG Farben through the Cecil family, who are themselves operatives of NW7, i.e. the intelligence branch of IG Farben. So it's interesting to consider. Indeed, IG Farben seems to be the overarching monolith here. Indeed, British intelligence is coordinated by IG Farben. So this leads into the theory that the Nazi intelligence services coordinated a takeover of Anglo-American jurisdictions and Soviet jurisdictions via intelligence, drugs, and psychiatry. Indeed, interestingly, I gleaned this information from an intelligence hypothesis memo by L. Ron Hubbard, so it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the jury's out on this individual, so it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, despite I am not a pro-Scientologist, I find some of these intelligence hypotheses of L. Ron Hubbard to be very interesting, and they really wake up certain strands of thinking in me, so it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the late Jim Keith also believed that L. Ron Hubbard's writings were decent information strands, so despite having misgivings about Scientology, it is possible to glean information from Scientologists' memorandums, so it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the Nazi intelligence services are attempting to secure a breach of my conditions regarding my release, and therefore I will be incarcerated in Green Lane Psychiatric Hospital under the care of a Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst linked agent, i.e. the Mossad operative and Sabbatean Dr. Peter Cohen, who is chiefly responsible for Green Lane Psychiatric Hospital's Poppy Ward. Indeed, this individual is thoroughly annoyed with me and still believes I am a Russian. Indeed, my intrigues surrounding Russian connections of myself are mainly connected to a Russian cult, not the Russian government. Indeed, I spent some time in a Russian psychiatric hospital in 2013, so it's very interesting to consider. Indeed, I made many friends in this psychiatric facility in Voronezh, and basically we operated a plan whereby we became an anti-Vatican cult. However, due to my amnesia and due to Nazi intelligence operatives operating several schemes against my cult, it has proved difficult to remain in contact, and therefore we communicate telepathically, which scares the Nazi intelligence services. Indeed, I intend to form a synthesis of my Russian mental patient cult philosophies with those of Anglo-American mental patients and conspiracy theorists. So it's interesting to consider these are elements that the Nazi intelligence services wish to contain and destroy. Indeed, we are part of the 20 to 30% of mental patients considered by Itzhak Bentov to be of a higher stage of evolution. And this annoys the Nazi intelligence continuums because they believe themselves to be the master race. Indeed, these Nazi intelligence continuums linked to the Roundway experiments in the figure of Adolf Kramer, who began the Roundway experiment in 1947 with a selection of operatives from the Room, i.e. British and American Office of Strategic Services intelligence operatives, who wanted to create a time travel and mind control base in the underground system beneath the Roundway Asylum, which at the time housed 9,000 mental patients. About 1,000 of these mental patients were utilized in experiments during the 50s, so it's interesting to consider there was a lot of experimentation going on at the Roundway Asylum complex. Indeed, this was all part of an overarching Nazi intelligence agenda, so it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, many of these operatives were trained as schizophrenic super spies and implanted into various government programs, including Gladio programs. Indeed, many of these paranoid schizophrenic super spies were inculcated with far-right philosophies and therefore used as operatives in anti-Soviet intrigues. However, they were too often breaking out of the programming and therefore were realizing that the Nazis had programmed them just as I did. Indeed, in 2020, I came to the realization that Nazi elements within the British intelligence and security structures had been programming me for several years and were attempting to direct me towards Strasserism, which is the basic theory that is liked so much by Troy Southgate, who is himself a Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst key operative, as well as a Mossad functionary, MI5 agent, and Freemason. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, what link do these Nazi intelligence continuums have with Freemasonry? Indeed, they are mainly initiates of secret German orders, many of which fall under the body of Freemasonry. And indeed, as I've stated, the Ordo Templi Orientis, i.e. German intelligence occult order, is the key functioning operation within British Masonic lodges these days. So it's interesting to consider. Indeed, German intelligence were able to penetrate the entire Masonic lodge system in the United Kingdom. This is not to defend Anglo-Freemasonry in the past, as it has always been a nefarious operation, but it is now wholly a German occult order. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the Nazis penetrated all of the Masonic lodges over the years and basically formed a fascist bloc within the United Kingdom. So it's all very interesting to consider these intelligence penetrations and how they relate to our current situation here in the United Kingdom, which is already quite scary indeed. I'm still being surveilled by Nazi agents operating from a house just around the corner, which MI5 have set up as a house from which to observe me. Indeed, there are always different residents living there, i.e. the people are always changing, and indeed they look like spooks. So it's all very interesting to consider this ongoing operation of the British intelligence services against me, coordinated by Nazi functionaries within the service. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. There are schemes operative at the moment also to basically corrupt me in some way, therefore give Wiltshire Police an excuse to arrest me, and then basically most probably put me into the psychiatric system again. Indeed, there are many networks that want to get me to Green Lane Hospital, i.e. the site of the Roundway experiment, so I could be utilized in torture programming sessions by psychiatrists at Green Lane who wish to destroy my mind, most probably as functionaries of the Lighthouse Network. Indeed, there are still all these movements that want to make a move to lobotomize me and effectively coordinate my activities and have me operating for the British Royals. Indeed, very interesting to consider that the Order of Nine Angles is basically a functioning operation of British royalty, who are themselves coordinated by IG Farben. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. This is the theory behind the new Eon. The new Eon theory coincides with Masonic New Age theories. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed the satanic Masonic crossover. Indeed, Freemasons are Satanists and Nazis. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. They program lower level British intelligence recruits with programming so that the lower level British recruits see themselves as Hebrew slaves, while their handlers, mainly of aristocratic British heritage, see themselves as Egyptian pharaohs and masters of these Hebrew slaves. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed these higher level British intelligence operatives of aristocratic blood lineage who see themselves as Egyptian pharaohs and masters often reincarnate Hebrew victims of the Holocaust to be sacrificed again. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. I've stated that jihadist elements and neo-Nazi satanic networks want to institute a new final solution of the Hebrew question in the United Kingdom by the mass murder of intelligent Hebrews and intelligent paranoid schizophrenics. Indeed, a lot of this mass murder of intelligent paranoid schizophrenics is coming by way of revenge by satanic networks for my operations that have been exposing them for these several years. So it's interesting to consider indeed vermin, known to Carl's folk as Cass Lynch or Cassius Lynch, who is a police constable of Devizes Police, is operative with a network of Satanists operating out of Birmingham, known as the Order of the Tempest, who are attempting to get a hit on me by networks of DVD agents within the Mossad. So it's interesting to consider indeed. The Mossad is a Sabbatean continuum operating for British royals and the Fourth Reich. Indeed, it's all very interesting how all of this interlinks with the Nazi agenda to penetrate and control British intelligence and corrupt the population and attempt to implement a Fourth Reich structure in the United Kingdom on the ashes of democracy. So it's all very interesting to see what is happening indeed. L. Ron Hubbard's intelligence hypothesis memorandum has proved very fruitful in the creation of this content. So I'm going to continue down the Scientology rabbit hole despite my own misgivings about the faith. There is a lot of decent information to be gleaned from Scientologists and ex-Scientologists, especially surrounding such networks as The Room, which was a key British intelligence operation levied at taking over American intelligence entirely and absorbing the American intelligence continuums into the British ones. So, and all of this was coordinated at the time by Abwehr operatives, who are the inheritors of the Bavarian Illuminati tradition. So it's all very interesting to consider this. Indeed, I'm going to leave it there now.